Hello YouTube. I have seen two subscriptions of mine now responding to a gentleman talking about the issue of free will and arguing for a determinist position. Um, so I figured I'd throw my hat into the ring because this is a video that I've wanted to make for a really long time and just never really had an excuse to do it. Hopefully it'll be a short video because I have a tendency to ramble and go on over long. Um, Determinism. One thing about determinism that's great is that operating with the assumption of determinism, that the universe is deterministic and that we are determined, operating with that as a methodological assumption, we can then go forward in making predictions and formulating hypotheses and doing all of these lovely things, right? This is called methodological determinism. Now, so then, and I have no problem with this in principle, right? So, when we look at the human mind as an object in the world, as a physical object in the world, then we operate with the assumption, and the gentleman who posted the video on determinism posted a study that shows that there are sort of pre-conscious antecedents to decision making, and states that this eradicates the notion of free will. But I think he's got it all wrong here, right? And the reason why he's really got it all wrong is that he has made an ontological claim about the human being, whereas free will, the assertion of the existence of free will, is not an ontological claim about the human being. It is a phenomenological claim about the human being, okay? Which is to say that, okay, let's say I entirely accept that all of my brain stuff is determined by pre-conscious factors, and all that stuff is determined by subconscious factors, and all of that's determined by physical forces in the world and a confluence of, sociobiological influences and blah, 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 blah. Let's say all of that is entirely true. Let's say I entirely accept it. Well, then I have to wake up tomorrow morning and I have to go to the grocery store and I have to choose what cereal I want. And at no point does any of the data or any of the ideas that are presented on the issue of determinism come into that decision making. It just doesn't fucking happen. Alright? Imagine how paralyzing it would be to go about the world in this way. So what I want to say here is that even though you might be right when looking at the ontology of the human being, and I'm conceding that point for the sake of argument, even though you might be right about the ontology of the human being, it's an utterly useless point. It serves no function other than a methodological function within the sciences. It does not serve a function in anything else. And I think that we generally operate on the presupposition of our own free will, regardless of whatever any scientific findings are. That is, free will is founded on a phenomenological basis. Free will is founded on the basis of I, in the first person, have the experience of making choices, rather than an ontological basis, which is he, she, or it. In the third person, you can trace out those the antecedents or the causes, the determining factors within the decision-making process, right? Those are two different ways of talking. Those are two radically different ways of talking. To illustrate this point, I've brought up before that you can conceive of love as a neurological phenomenon, right? But it's pretty fucking useless to think about love in that way. I would submit that it's much better in the sense that it's much more useful and it's much more meaningful and much more substantive to go to poetry, for instance, to talk about love, than to go to neurology to talk about love. And I don't want to say that either is wrong per se, because then this is the move that the hardline determinist would make, is to say that we have the experience of free will, but that's an illusion, right? This is, mind you, this is just rhetoric. It's not based on any. It's more or less just an attempt to demean something. It's not anything else. And I don't think you get anywhere good by saying that human beings are objects in a mechanical system of the universe, and they are not subjects. They do not have the capacity for agency. They do not have the capacity for autonomy, which, again, as far as I can tell, is entirely justified phenomenologically. That's pretty much it. The position of determinism is useless for most of our endeavors in the world. We tend to not operate on the assumption. You could also add the Habermasian argument, which is that the science that comes to the decision that we are determined creatures, that science itself is based on an assumption about human agency. It is based on the idea of rational creatures that are able to conduct investigations, that are able to make choices, that are able to do these things. So the fact is, even your determinist stance is predicated almost entirely on the assumption that we have free will. So the question then is not, or the argument, I suppose, is actually not a question of scientific inquiry. It's a question of phenomenological experience, and I would actually say that what it really is, what it really is that free will is transcendental. It is transcendental vis-a-vis discourse. Any discourse assumes that human beings are free agents. It doesn't even matter, right? It does not come into it at all. That perhaps we are ontologically determined in one way or another. It just does not matter. It is a transcendental imperative that we are free agents for discourse itself. You actually cannot make the claim that we are determined without therefore implying that we are free. And that might seem paradoxical. It might be crazy to you that we have to deal with two mutually exclusive conceptions about human agency when we're dealing with when we talk within different domains, within the domain of the human sciences versus the domain of I have to wake up and go to the store or some such whatever, right? That might be inconceivable to you, that we have this contradiction, that we have this paradox. But the fact is, that is the fact of this conversation, and you cannot get around it by saying that free will is merely an illusion.